I tried to talk less during that one, just because it's, whenever it's kind of hard to hear what's going on. So we can do a little summary, right? A little summary. Right off the bat, going with the positives. The positives are always the most important thing to talk about, right? They've confirmed that they are working on adding an extra alternative endgame mode that's not nightmares. This is fucking amazing, because nightmares are garbage. Like, nightmares are a very clear step down from rifts. It's worse content. It's bad. They're adding something different, and they acknowledge that nightmares are not something that's good for leaderboards. Leaderboards are aimed at season 3, which means we're probably going to have that alternative endgame by season 3. Which that sounds great. That is definitely the best thing that came from that talk. Was hopefully, by season 3 we're going to have the leaderboard and a system that's actually good with leaderboards that isn't nightmares. It's going to be good. On the topic of nightmares, they said something very interesting about nightmares, which I did not expect at all. Which was like my take on nightmares after kind of playing through them and watching others was that it felt like Nightmare 100 was not meant to be farmed for a few reasons. One, it's super fucking hard. The defense required to not get one shot was so extraordinary, and the loot didn't really scale. Like, doing a Nightmare 100 instead of a Nightmare 70, you don't really get more stuff. The only thing that scales is frequency of ancestral items. But once you're doing Nightmare 70, it's already almost all ancestrals. So it kind of felt like Nightmare 100 was intended to just be this what's the term we use in PoE? Aspirational goal that you're trying to achieve, not to farm, just to see if you can do it, to test your build. That's kind of what I assumed their intention was. But this campfire chat pretty clearly stated that that's not their intention. They actually do want that to be kind of what you take your build to, and then you stay in there. And they use Nightmare 70 as the current benchmark for what they want 100 to be. And they're going to nerf Nightmare dungeons in terms of difficulty to try to get us to that point, where current 70 is more like 100. Which, all of that sounds great. I think one of the biggest problems with Nightmare dungeon difficulty is armor. It feels like the game is balanced around you having that 85% DR from armor, and only certain classes, aka not Zork, can really get that reliably, and the way you get that is very one-dimensional. You need armor on your Paragon board, you need armor in your jewelry, you need armor percent on your gear, and you probably also need disobedience. And it's like a bunch of checkboxes you just gotta have to reach what feels like the baseline expectation of your defense. We'll see how they do that, how they go about making nightmares easier. The baseline density buff is interesting. We'll see how it plays out. But one thing that is very clear when playing this game is that certain skills will enjoy that and be able to have more fun with that, and certain skills will not. Because a lot of skills in this game are not area skills. They have a fixed number of hits. When you make the average pack size 10 instead of 5 or 4, something like Chain Lightning is fucked. It's dead. It's it only hits 5 targets. What are you doing? Barrage and Rapid Fire are gonna have similar problems, but Rogue has Shadow Imbue, ways to amplify their area to still hit all the targets. But even then, when I was league starting this league with Barrage, it was very noticeable the gap of Barrage versus Twisting Blades, due to the fact that when there's 6, 7, 8 targets, Barrage is only hitting 10 of them, and I'm not one-shotting them, so it's it really feels bad. Increasing density is going to make those skills struggle, and they're probably going to have to hopefully look at that and fix that at the same time as buffing density. What else did they talk about there? Stash tabs. Alright. Right, we're still on positives. They've confirmed that it is technologically possible to increase the stash tab size. That's the positive. The not positive part, 4 and 5 doesn't matter. I think, having played the game for about 300 hours within one season, the preseason, if I want to play more than one character, I need 10. 10 would mean that I don't have to make mules or do what I did, which is I literally deleted all of my side grades and my alternative build uniques, my alternative build aspects. I deleted all that shit. It's all gone when I made a new character because there's no space for it. If I had 10 tabs, I probably wouldn't need to do that. That'd be ideal. But that's the kind of thing that you run into that problem pretty deep into a season. Uniques, right? Uniques. Turbo Uber Uniques. The current drop rate of those, you need to find 400,000 temerities before you find a Shaco on average. The average playtime required for that is significantly longer than a human lifespan. This is bad. This is bad. There's no subjective opinions here. This is bad. I think those uniques would be better if you would find like one super rare unique like per season if you're playing like 300-hour seasons, 500-hour seasons. That way, like, it's still really rare. You're not gonna find more than like fucking one Shaco a year or something, but you're gonna find at least like one every now and then they're hopefully they're all strong enough that they can cause you to want to create a new build with it. If you average like one super unique of like the 10 that there are per season, like you could like make a new character with it and like have some new idea, and that'd be cool. But like this like 1 in 200 million hours played shit is like it doesn't need to exist. There's no reason for it to exist at the current drop rates. Like the current drop rates make it feel like it's like some opening of like Encourage like bullshit where it's like whenever one drops, it's supposed to be like a region-wide like celebration that we're all happy that one fucker from Nebraska got one. Like I don't give a shit about him. But like one guy getting it like every week is that's insane. That's insane. It's completely over the line of what is okay for the rarity of an item. I don't think it needs to be common enough that you're gonna get like 3 Shakos per season and you're just like, man, it took me 4 days to get one this time instead of 2. Like that'd be too common for what they're trying to go for. But like if you're a fucking committed Diablo player, you're buying every goddamn MTX in the shop, you're buying the accelerated battle pass, you're playing the full length of the season, you probably should see one of these items before you literally die. And they removed boosting. Right? Boosting's gone. They mentioned, this was months ago, this memory is months old, right? But they mentioned there would be a mechanism in the game so that your second, third, and fourth characters of a season would be faster than the first. My understanding of the current battle pass is that mechanism is 12% XP. And that's the only thing, right? There's nothing else? Because like when it was talked about, I was thinking it would be like your second character goes from 0 to 50 like twice as fast, maybe even 3 times faster from like 0 to 50. That's kind of what I was expecting, a way to like really just zoom through the early game. But like 8% fully capped, yeah, that's nothing. And they deleted the early game boosting. Being able to skip the campaign is great. The changes to power leveling with the current 0 to 50 and the complete lack of ability to make like twink gear or speed up your second character is really bad. Like one of the biggest problems in PoE for so many people is they have to do the campaign again. And in PoE, if you want, you can wear the most insane shit and dump through the campaign in 90 minutes. If you spend a lot of currency and you get the really good early game items. That's not a thing in D4. Like when you make a druid, you're carrying over nothing except for materials from your prior character, which means that your experience going 0 to 50 is not going to be that much faster. And it's definitely too slow. I think most people don't want to spend 3-4 hours doing 0 to 50, which usually is meaningless time. You're not finding anything that matters. So like, I want to see 0 to 50 be a lot faster. They said they're going to make 70 to 100 faster. I think 0 to 50 on second, third, fourth characters is too long. And it will absolutely prevent me from rerolling. Pivoting from the aspects, one question that got brought up, and they kind of didn't really go too in depth on the answer for the aspects and the stash space problem. I would love if aspects were completely redesigned in how they're stored to be kind of like you find Edge Master, and every time you find an Edge Master, based on the role of that Edge Master, you can like destroy it for like experience to your codex, and it just makes your codex better. And then once you find like, you know, a couple perfect ones or like, you know, a few mid-tier ones, like 10 mid-tier ones, like you'll have a perfect Edge Master in your codex that you can use forever. And like it would take like a while to make it perfect, and it would be constant incremental progression every time you find it, and it ramped up. And that way you wouldn't have to store them. And like you wouldn't feel so bad about changing builds. One thing that is very apparent for like my barb is like if I want to try a different build that uses different like ring aspects, I need to find different rings. Because if I replace my perfect rolled bold chieftains on my bis ring, I'm probably never going to find another one of those until, well, for reference, I played barb for 300 hours. I never found a perfect one. Best one I have is 1.8. Like once I put a perfect one on there with the current iteration, I can never use that ring for a different build that doesn't use that aspect because I'm never going to have another bold chieftains that's perfect again. So like I would love if it didn't make respecking feel so bad, trying new builds feel so bad, to the point where like you pretty much just, once you commit an aspect to like an item, like you're just never going to change it. But it really feels like the current aspect system makes it hard to try new builds with the same gear set, and that is annoying. Bug fixes. Fix things that are bugged, even if it's a nerf. If it's not working the way it's intended, fix it before a season starts, ideally. The timing now is so fucked because like so many people are now playing builds that are still bugged, and now if they fix it, now that the season started, that's gonna suck for those players. Like the season start was the perfect time to fix all these fucking bugs, and just like 5 of them just didn't get fixed, and like now it's like we're back at the same problem we were a month ago, where like if you fix it now, people have committed their time to playing those builds, and it's gonna feel like shit. So that sucks. Hopefully it's fixed by season 2, and they really just get it all, swat it all. They talked about CDR a little bit. Basically, they acknowledged that nerfing CDR feels bad. Nerfing CDR for some classes is worse than others. And they also acknowledged that players have fun when they have enough CDR that they constantly have their buttons up and can kill a lot of monsters. And after acknowledging all that, they then nerfed CDR, which is, you know, controversial, to say the least. They need to both nerf CDR and introduce one some abilities. Yeah, like this campfire, it kind of took a different route to explaining why the CDR nerfs happened compared to the patch notes. The patch notes stated, we are nerfing CDR rolls on gear because the rolls on gear feel mandatory, and we want you to not feel like you have to get CDR on gear. And the solution to that problem, that stated developer goal, is reduce the CDR rolls on gear and also reduce the base cooldowns of everything in the game. But then when they talked about in the campfire, it was more like, you know, like when you get enough CDR, like things are just permanent, and like from a design point of view, things being permanent very often is not what they really want. But like those are two different reasons for why the nerf took place. And no matter what, like, yeah, I definitely agree. Base cooldowns in this game are super long. That was something I noticed when I first started playing in the early game beta a long ass time ago. My leap cooldown on Barb was 18 seconds. Like, that is astronomical. And I understand if you put 5 points into it and you get CDR on gear, like, you can make it lower, but like 18 as the baseline, the starting point, is fucking insane. Is this slow cooking RPG? Yeah. I still, like, you know, this patch, obviously not the best. There's a reason that it got the reception that it did. I still think this game's going to be good in like a year. I think it's going to be a bumpy road to get there, but I think we're going to make it there eventually, but it's going to be a while. The way they talked about Vuln is the kind of thing, like, Vuln should not have made it into the game in its current state. Like, Vuln, it should have been more apparent how problematic it was and how required it was during the year-long early game beta, or not early game, the year-long end-game beta and all that. Like, it really feels like the power of Vuln was designed with the idea that it's not permanent, but then like a select few builds for the classes can make it permanent, which make those builds the best, just because Vuln is so powerful. And any build that can't get permanent Vuln is not a build. And if they just make it stack like every other damage source, like damage to close and damage to everything, that would fix the problem, but it also would, like, it would kind of take away from the, I guess, like the in-game gearing depth, because it's like, okay, well now it's just another % increased damage that's the same as everything else. And then it's like, okay, well now you have crit chance, crit damage, resource gen, and like nothing else. Like there's no like prime stat that you're excited about getting, because the rest are all equivalent. They're all the same. Won't you do less damage, be harder to get, and extra effects? I feel like Vuln as a concept, it feels like the idea is something kind of like Focus in PoE, where it's like you have this temporary burst window where you kind of like pop off, and you can scale that with Vuln on gear, so you can specialize into this burst window, but then Vuln can just be permanent. So like you just stack it on everything. Like there's and really just listening to them talk about why they made certain changes. One thing that was really weird, they kind of talked about how they have plans to nerf Nightmare Dungeon difficulty, like we talked about earlier, making current Nightmare Dungeon 70 what the future Nightmare 100 will be, so it's going to be easier. And they talked about that in the same context while talking about the nerfs to overall player power to crit damage and vulnerability. As if these changes were being talked about internally at the same time, but then now like the patch comes out, they nerfed the player power, and now the Nightmare Dungeon difficulty is going to be fixed like a week later. Like that desync is like really bizarre. But like one of the biggest problems with Nightmare Dungeons is not really player damage to them. It really just feels like monsters do too much damage, and the armor required to survive them is too high. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like fuck nightmares in general. They said they're gonna create an alternative endgame, which it sounds like it's gonna be linked to leaderboards, which are stated to come out in season 3, or that's the goal. And that's all I care about. Like, fuck it, dude. The moment nightmares are not the content that I have to do at the end of this game, my hours played will increase a lot, I think. Nightmares are not good. Like, if we get like a really good end game of just slaughtering monsters like that, that could be sick. No, like, less backtracking, less stuff. I did love the way that he dodged the question about the reset dungeon thing. Like, because it was like, when I saw the patch note, it was like, what the fuck? Like, why would 3 to 5, like, why? It didn't make any sense. The answer to the question, for those that, actually want to know, the answer to the question is they added the reset button, right? Like, they added the reset button back, and they felt like they didn't want it to be too efficient, so they, like, took away the speed of the porting out by a little bit. No fucking clue why they felt that was necessary, but that's why it happened. I think even with that happening, group play resetting is still better than solo. But it was really bizarre, because he was like, yeah, it's like we increased it by 2 seconds, and it's not that big of a deal, but it's just like, why, like, why slower? But then also, on the topic of things that feel unnecessarily slow, the hearts in the current season didn't get talked about at all. Probably because the season is so new, there's not enough time. But like, when I kill a monster with a heart, why do I click a heart and then wait 7 seconds to kill the monster again, instead of just the monster dropping the heart when I kill it, or like respawning faster? Like that, like 7 seconds of just like, yeah, just wait here. I don't understand why it needs to be that long. That's kind of excessive. If it was like 2 seconds, I get it. 2 seconds is enough for the monster animation to play its death animation, and then you see the visual of it coming out of the ground, and then it's there, and then you fight it. But like 7 is like, I'm actually just sitting there waiting, like, just like curious if it's even gonna spawn. Go through the inventory while waiting. That's a good use of your time. Definitely. Go through your inventory while waiting. Mark things as junk. That's definitely a very good use of your time. But it's just one of those things where it's like it just feels... It feels like the theme / the lore of the mechanic is taking priority over how it actually feels with the gameplay. It's like no one wants to just do nothing. It's called an action RPG. I don't want to be doing walking simulator content like Nightmare Dungeons a lot of the time. I don't want to be waiting. I want to fight shit. I want to kill shit, pick up loot, get good loot, and have a good time. The end result of all of those changes to itemization was just that modifiers that are not good now roll on more slots for more classes, which will make it harder to get the mods you want. Like, that was the result of it. I don't know if that was the intention. I don't know if that was the goal, but that was the result of it. Anyone going to particular that has to be the intention? I don't think so. Like, listening to how they talked about so many of these changes, it's clear that, like, a lot of the changes, they just didn't really fully grasp how they would be received and the end result of them. Like the goal that they're stating towards working towards and the changes they make are not in sync. Which a lot of that is just because it's a really new game and sometimes bad shit happens. Everything seems rushed. Yeah, like D4 definitely seems rushed. In a lot of cases, which is why I think the game is going to be good eventually. Like, just the fact that they're making these, like, widespread changes to game mechanics and talking about adding new in-game systems entirely and balancing nightmare dungeons by massive, like, 30 fucking level difficulties. There's so many massive changes. It's not the kind of tuning you expect in, like, a release game. Like, that's the kind of shit that I kind of, I wish would get sorted out during the alpha and beta and all that shit. But this is the beta, effectively, Like, modern gaming, the first month/quarter of release, this is the beta. And how they respond to feedback and how they make the game better or worse in this beta period is important.
But we need more stash help now, right? And so in 1.1.1, we're going to be adding an additional stash tab for players so they can store more aspects, more Malignant Hearts.
One? Just one?
The engineering team is working really hard to make these adjustments possible for us. Like there's more that we're doing. This is now a never-ending conversation of what else can we do and what else can we be doing to try to improve the experience. But like we've definitely heard these two concerns and we're just able to bring them in.
Dude, I thought there was actually it was too complicated.
Oh, and I should mention that.
But if they can do one, they can do 6.
Tab, we're making a small.